the beginning 16 years ago, I was always adverse to reviewing shows that were made for younger audiences long after my time at that age. I know I've always been a senior citizen as far as internet reviewers go, and that's why I've always feared that since modern cartoons and other such shows weren't made for my generation, could I really be fair to them? That was before I got hooked on a little show called Phineas and Ferb, which admittedly was made with something extra for the people of my generation who are now parents. Nonetheless, it got me thinking that maybe every once in a while I could give something like them a shot. If anything, if I'm not a huge fan of the show, maybe that means I can look at it objectively. Or at least look at it compared to a lot of the shows I did watch at that age. And that's definitely the case for our subject today. Yeah, you probably figured this given how little I've talked about it all these years, but I've never really watched The Fairly Odd Parents. Mainly because even as a kid, I was never into Nickelodeon's original programming. I'm the kid who grew up on You Can't Do That on Television and the Tomorrow People. I know the basic gist of it. It's about a sad sack kid named Timmy Turner who is gifted a pair of fairy godparents named Cosmo and Wanda who grant him any wishes he wants. With a few exceptions. You know, there are always some advisos, a couple of quid pro quos. And oh boy, is that talked about a lot on the web regarding this show. That's the thing. This is probably no less than the third most reviewed animated show on the internet, behind Friendship is Magic and SpongeBob SquarePants. With the main gripe being that the series went way past its shelf life. And while there have been quite a few most infamous episodes railed on by the cartoon community, it seems this special that aired in November of 2011 was the point of no return for the series. To which I say, after watching numerous reviews of it and finally the episode itself, really? This thing? Yeah, you can go ahead and dismiss me automatically, just because most of my information on this show is secondhand from the likes of Phantom Strider and Mr. Enter, but I'm not really getting the hate for this thing. Especially in regards to the big surprise of the episode, which yes, we are definitely going to get into. So, yeah, if you thought me praising the How I Met Your Mother finale was sacrilege, get ready to really break out the torches and pitchforks as we take a look at the Fairly Odd Parents special, Timmy's Secret Wish. The episode starts with Timmy Turner making his 1 millionth wish, which is apparently to have his own cheering section because Family Guy beat the show to the punch about giving him his own theme song. Dude, this is gonna get really awkward for you if you ever get a girlfriend. By the way, how long has Timmy had his fairies in order to make 1 million wishes? That seems like it would take a very long time, especially for someone who's only 10 years old. They're probably not gonna explain that, right? Jorgen, a high-ranking fairy who essentially acts as a supervisor to Cosmo and Wanda, invites Timmy to Fairyland for a parade in his honor, where each float in the parade represents one of Timmy's wishes. And they also show the consequences. It appears that almost all of Timmy's wishes caused his home city to catch on fire or otherwise get wrecked, including the time he actually wished for the city to catch on fire so he could miss school. Man, Dimsdale's insurance rates must be worse than Angel Grove's. Jorgen admits that this has caused the High Fairy Council to perform an inquiry into Timmy's wishes, but says that nothing will likely come from it. Cue Timmy getting thrown in jail and being told he's going to be on trial for his very life. Okay, maybe it's not that harsh, but if it is determined that he's the worst fairy god kid ever, he'll be stripped of his fairies and all of his wishes will be undone. Huh, I kind of figured most of his wishes had been undone by the end of each episode anyway. And here's the first major issue quite a few people had with the episode, which I have to agree with. How can Timmy be the worst god kid ever when he's not even the worst Cosmo has had? As I've heard from other people, Cosmo once had another god kid named Mary Ann, who maybe never wished for anything that terrible, only for the death of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. You know, the Austrian dignitary whose assassination caused the First World War, which directly led to the Holocaust and the Second World War. Makes me feel a little less guilty that I might have wished for the Lakers to get tripped up against the Mavericks back in 2011. You didn't hear that. Naturally, the trial begins immediately, but Jorgen insists that Timmy will get a great defense attorney. Cue Cosmo as his lawyer.
We need to prove that I'm not the worst fairy god kid ever.
What? I thought we had to prove you were the worst god kid ever. What am I supposed to do with all this evidence against you?
You know what? I'd still take him as my attorney over Richard Fish. The prosecution is represented by Foop. Foop is the evil antimatter counterpart of Cosmo and Wanda's kid, Poof. He's taking the case because since Poof was the result of Timmy wishing Cosmo and Wanda had a kid, undoing all of his wishes means Poof will no longer exist. This is another plot point people have taken issue with, pointing out that since Foop is Poof's counterpart, Poof no longer existing means Foop can no longer exist. You know, the whole evil can't exist without good thing and bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. But here's the thing. What if this actually is Foop's intention? What if the reason Foop is so evil and malicious is because he actually hates his very existence? To the point where his greatest wish is to never have existed. I mean, almost the same thing happened with Callisto in Xena Warrior Princess, when she became a god and realized not even being omnipotent could take away her pain and misery. And she tried to get Xena to kill her with the Golden Hind's blood because she hoped that would mean even her very soul would no longer exist. Man, a lot of what I've watched over the years have had some really dark undertones. Anyway, cue the trial proceedings!
Timmy Turner is responsible for global warming!
So cold, sick of winter. I wish it was warmer.
I move to strike! Drat! I left the tent in!
See, you guys think I'm gonna lose my mind over how ridiculous all of this is, but you forget, I've watched every episode of Ally McBeal! Of course, Cosmo has his ace in the hole, Poof.
Oh, Cosmo! That's the day Timmy wished up Poof so we could all be a family!
Yeah, I'm actually surprised the other reviewers didn't call out Cosmo more for using his own kid in the trial, but whatever. Suffice it to say, it works! About the only thing that might have worked better was if they'd had a dog to bring to the stand. Maybe we shouldn't talk about that any further. But just as the gavel is about to pound and declare Timmy innocent, Foop discovers the big secret. Quite literally.
He hasn't made a million wishes after all. He's made 1,000,001! Timmy Turner made a secret wish!
I did make a secret wish. Cosmo doesn't remember granting it because I wished he'd forget.
So wait, doesn't that mean Timmy actually made 1,000,002 wishes, eh? It's here that it's revealed that secret wishes are banned after one kid in 1986 secretly made a wish for a bird that eats fairies. I'd say that's another case for a god kid worse than Timmy, but again, whatever. And this is why every wish ever since is recorded and archived. This is one of the absolute biggest issues that many people have had with the episode. First is the question of, if wishes were recorded before 1986, which is the only way a wish could be secret because it wasn't recorded, why would they need to make a rule to record all wishes after that one? My answer is that beforehand, it clearly was a rule that wasn't strictly enforced, at least not as well as the fairies thought it was. I compare it to the pitch clock in Major League Baseball. For years, there always was a rule on the books that the umpire could call a ball or a strike as a penalty for either the pitcher or batter stalling and delaying the game too much. But it wasn't enforced very often. Finally, upon deciding the games were taking too long because of so many players using stalling tactics and it affecting viewership, MLB officially declared that starting in 2023, the rule would be strictly enforced on every pitch and had a clock put in every ballpark to time the players. Clearly at one point, the fairies got lazy and didn't consider how bad a secret unrecorded wish could be, until they saw their own people getting attacked and eaten from one that was made. So they clamped down to make sure a secret wish could never happen again. Timmy got around this by wishing for Cosmo to forget granting the wish before it could be recorded, which clearly would not be recorded either. Which leads to the second question. If Cosmo didn't remember the secret wish, how could he have had it in an entire recorded collection of Timmy's wishes that he himself jotted down? But again, this is still reasonable. In so many stories, loss of memory, be it from magical or other means, is never a case of permanent removal like erasing a file from a hard drive. Some small bit of it is always there in the back of the memory, subconsciously. I mean, that was how Kay was able to get his memories back in Men in Black 2 after he was neuralized at the end of the first movie. And hey, this show has parodied Men in Black before, so it's entirely possible that Cosmo could have written down the subconscious memory of Timmy's secret wish without even realizing he was doing it. Especially since Cosmo is the one who's always a few Fruit Loops shy of a full box. Remember, he didn't go so far as to write down what the wish was, just that the wish was made. So just what was the wish that was so sordid that Timmy had to make sure the fairies never found out about it?
I secretly wish that everyone would stop aging so that I could stay 10 years old and keep my fairies forever.
What? When did you make this wish?
50 years ago?
I swear to you all, this is the exact face I made when I first heard those words. Because I say this with actually no hyperbole intended. This might just be the greatest plot twist in the entire history of storytelling! Do you not understand what has happened? For maybe the first time ever, we are actually given a reason as to how a cartoon show can go on for years and years with no one aging! And it's a reason that actually has some level of plausibility within the context of the show itself! Okay, yes, there was that episode of Tiny Toon Adventures where it stated that laughter keeps a toon young, which is how the likes of Bugs Bunny and friends could not age for more than 50 years. But that was a show where it's established that the characters know that they're cartoon characters. The meta situation was part of the joke. This show, even with the fantasy elements, is still more or less set up in a cartoon equivalent of our actual world. Timmy Turner, his parents, the babysitter, the teacher, they're meant to be cartoon counterparts of us, not knowing that they are in a cartoon. So someone like Timmy Turner remaining 10 years old for this long makes less sense. And now this show has just told us how it could make sense! I mean, how far down does this rabbit hole go? How many other cartoons are out there where the characters don't age because of Timmy's wish? Is this why comic strip and comic book characters don't seem to age? This whole thing could go 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon down to the 9,000th power! This reveal is so outstanding and mind-blowing that frankly, I didn't even care what happens in the rest of the special! So because of this, the Fairy Council reverses course and declares Timmy the worst god kid ever and undoes all his wishes, which means Timmy is now taken to a world where he's an old man and Cosmo and Wanda never knew he existed. And the second part of the special is all about Timmy having to travel to the fairies' equivalent of the Phantom Zone so he can find out what happened to Poof and Foop, and has to make some huge sacrifice to save them. So Cosmo and Wanda can argue before the Fairy Council that Timmy was a good kid after all. And thus they restore everything back to its natural order, and Timmy promises he'll never make another secret wish again, just make normal wishes that destroy everything in sight. Maybe I should wish that people stop being so cranky and bitter on the internet. But then I'd be out of a job. Never mind! Look, maybe if I grew up watching and loving this show, my take on this special would be different. But to me, this is one of the most daring episodes of any TV show for what the show is about that I've ever seen. Because it actually stands up and calls itself out for how ridiculous everything that has happened in the show is. And not in some jaded, half-assed way from people who are trying to come off as smarter than the viewers themselves. It makes a lot more sense if you give it some thought, but still don't take it so damn seriously. Because a show like The Fairly Odd Parents isn't supposed to be taken seriously. It's a ridiculous fantasy comedy where a bratty kid is given access to phenomenal cosmic powers. We're not talking Game of Thrones here. And yes, there have been other episodes of this show with much more legit gripes against them, and maybe I'll get to one of them in the future. But if Timmy's secret wish is one that got you so enraged that you want to burn down Nickelodeon Studios, this is one time where I have to say, go touch grass. Really, there's a lot worse stuff out there than this thing.